Week 3 of the NFL is in the books, and honestly, the play of the rookies this week was pretty good around the league. There were actually quite a few big performances. We're going to go ahead and talk about that, sucker. So let's go ahead, get into it with Jayden Daniels. By far had the biggest rookie performance at quarterback with the big win over the Bengals. He ends up going 21 of 23 for 254 yards, 2 tutties. Also had a tutty on the ground along with 39 rushing yards. What's the team's leading rusher as well? And Jayden Daniels honestly looked magnificent. Ended up having an adjusted completion percentage of 91.3. Might be like, oh man, all these are little kitty dump offs, man. Must be a check down wizard. That must be what's going on. It's RPO heavy. There ain't no way. But no, he took some chances down the field. He really did. Like, if you want to go and look, like, he was 2 of 4. His 2 misses came on passes of 20 yards or more. So you'll love to see that. And he had one of the big touchdowns through the air, downfield. He was 2 for 4 for 82 yards on deep balls. And I mean, if we want to take a look at the intermediate level, he's 4 of 4. He was perfect, some would say, at targeting the intermediate level. So this was a good game by Jayden Daniels. He felt unstoppable. The offense felt unstoppable. And fun fact, if you didn't know, well, I guess now you know, this team hasn't had to punt the last 2 games. Every drive for the Commanders, the last 2 games, have ended in scores. Granted, last week it was 6 field goals, but they won that game nonetheless. Did they? They did win that game. Was it 7 field goals? Golly. It's kind of ridiculous, but dude, Jayden Daniels looking good, looking the best among the rookies. And granted, his team's going to have to win shootouts. The defense is at best mediocre at times, but it is going to be a defense that is very much going to have to overachieve. But he came out and showed, oh, I could win a shootout with Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So hell yeah, good performance by you, Jayden Daniels. Got to give him a thumbs up, matter of fact. Let's talk about Bo Nix. No Bo picks this week. Granted, didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he did rush for 47 yards. But he was 25 of 36 for 216 yards. He was another quarterback that's not been afraid to attack deep and has honestly not been terrible when attacking deep. He was 2 for 3 on passes of 20 yards or more for 53 yards. That's where his 2 big-time throws came from. Honestly, like the worst play by Bo Nix ended up getting negated for, I can't remember if it was like a fall or offsides. I think it was offsides. But it was the fumbled snap. That was almost a big disaster. But he ran the offense to perfection. And this was still a team with no run game. Bo Nix is looking better. Still needs to look better over the intermediate parts of the field. I think his completion rate on passes in between 10 to 19 yards is like, 40%? So not good for a guy you anticipated to be a pinpoint or have pinpoint accuracy. But this was a good game. Got a big win at Raymond James against the Bucks, a Bucks team that was surging. Granted, this is also a hurt Bucks team, whether you look at the right tackle position. More importantly, if we're going to talk about Bo Nix, looking at the defense, no Vita Vea, no Kalijah Cansey, no Antoine Winfield. So, yeah, it was a little beat up. But, like, Bo Nix went in, got the job done, and looked good. He looked good. I'm not going to talk about Caleb Williams in this video because it's literally much of the same with Caleb Williams. It's what we've seen the last 3 weeks. He works well within the offense for the first couple of drives. Crap hits the fan because they can't run the ball. They can't necessarily pass protect well either. And it just devolves into chaos. So there's really not much to talk about with Caleb Williams because there is a lot of problems elsewhere, but also with Caleb himself. I don't want to put that all on the offensive line. He is creating some pressures for himself. But again, that happens typically after the first quarter where it's like, oh crap, we need to answer back. We're falling behind. We he can't move the football. So he's trying to go out there and do something special, and sometimes he does a little bit more harm than good. But yeah, again, there's really nothing has changed with Caleb, at least thus far. Everybody loves the NFL draft, and I know you want to be familiar with every potential prospect that your team may draft. So I got good news for you. My draft guide is available for purchase. It is good throughout the entire draft cycle, and it updates through the season regularly. You'll get my current evals and rankings on hundreds of different players with player backgrounds and analytics. It also contains combine and pro day numbers, as well as my notes from the Senior and Shrine Bowl. You can purchase it for a one-time payment of $30 on PayPal, Venmo, and now I have the Cash App. Follow the link in the description and be sure to include your email because it is a Google spreadsheet. That is how I share it with you. So please don't make me hunt down your email. Just don't do it. Anywho, it's a great purchase and it's a great way to support the channel. Now, of course, with some uppers, there are some downers. And unfortunately, my boy Brian Thomas Jr. was one of those downers. Now, it wasn't a complete loss of a game. I mean, it was a complete loss. The Jaguars lost 47-10 to the Bills. Brian Thomas had a really bad drop. The other one, you could give him the benefit of the doubt, but he had a really, really bad drop in there. He goes 0 for 2 on contested catches, but he did have 3 forced missed tackles. That was nice to see. He ends up finishing the game with 5 receptions for 48 yards. He's getting a healthy amount of targets, 9 targets. Pretty darn solid, but you got to be better. You got to be more sure hand. And to be fair, Brian Thomas has started out the year a lot hotter than I anticipated. He was somebody coming out of the draft where I was like, okay, you look at the athletic skill set, the just the frame, and you're like, this is someone who has the chance to be special. I was saying, hey man, if he stays another year, he's probably in the top 10 conversation. Still ends up going in at what, like pick like 23, I think. I can't remember now. It's been so long, but still goes in the first round. And we saw some of the glimmers early, some of the flashes, but it is important to expect some of the road bumps, some of the speed bumps, some of the hiccups. Like, not every performance is going to be a stellar performance, especially with how bad the Jags are just struggling in general. Whether it's whether it's the tackle position, getting pressure on Trevor Lawrence, whether it's drops, not necessarily just Thomas, like Christian Kirk had like 2 drops in the opener. It's just the Jaguars have had a tough time just being successful and sustaining drives or even getting those drives started. And we could even point to the defense. They've had a few critical injuries, and they necessarily haven't been consistent in getting pressure and whatnot. So it's like the Jaguars just are a problem in general right now, but Brian Thomas somewhat kind of added to that. It's not like Trevor Lawrence was perfect either. He certainly wasn't. But yeah, I think better days lay ahead, but in a week full of actually really good performances, it was kind of hard to find some of the bad ones, but they certainly were there. As we're going to keep on talking, we're going to talk about Nate Wiggins. So Wiggins basically kind of came in relief, kind of, sort of. He came in and ended up getting, I think, like 35 snaps. Let me just confirm that. He ended up getting 38 snaps. So freaking close. So freaking close. But the problem was he was going to get tested a ton. The Cowboys were down big. So you know Dak was going to be slinging that football all around. And that's exactly what happened. Now, Dak, not to say he was perfect, when you're playing it with a negative game script and you're playing from behind, you're gonna put some dicey throws out there. It was just the Ravens couldn't really benefit from some of those dicey throws. And Nate Wiggins, honestly, outside of I think he was covering CeeDee Lamb, where he was able to jar the ball loose, but like Lamb had that. Should have been a catch, but Wiggins was able to get in there and force the big hit. But outside of that, he was targeted 5 times, allowed 4 receptions that went for 82 yards. So not a great performance, missed 2 tackles as well. So like, yeah, hey, listen, they're rookies. there's gonna be good weeks. There's gonna be bad weeks. Not everyone's gonna come out and look like a superstar from the get-go. So it's to be expected. Listen, there's a lot more to like about Nate Wiggins than there is to dislike. Better days lay ahead. But again, in a week full of pretty good performances, he had one of the more down ones. But I'm done talking about the bad. Let's talk about the good. Let's talk about Braden freaking Fiske. Get after it, young man. Came alive. Had the most pressures of any rookie this past week, where he had 7 pressures for 3 tackles. He had a win rate of 12%, which is pretty solid for an interior player. And that whole Rams defensive line went in and got after it. I think Kobe Turner may have had 7 pressures as well. You had 4 pressures, I think, a piece for Jared Verse and Byron Young. Like, the defensive line was just utterly scary, but Braden Fiske was going in and getting after it. He had a good defensive stop, and it was a big part of what kind of limited, I say limited, but yeah, limited what the Niners could do offensively. And I mean, you had like a Juwan Jennings have a huge game, but that defensive pass rush did a great job of being able to minimize that and kind of keep that at a manageable point total for Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense to even have a chance. So great week for Braden Fiske, a guy that I wasn't necessarily nearly as high on as the general draft consensus, but you love to freaking see it. You love to see it. Like, I had no doubt about this dude's motor and his ability to penetrate and get after it, and that was probably going to be where he was the most successful in the NFL. I did worry a little bit about when it comes to saying discipline, run gap, and just keeping gap integrity. And do you have really any more moves when you're not winning initially? And in this game, he was winning initially. It was a really good game for him. Next on the list, I got Laiatu Latu. Big game against the struggling Bears offense. He had 5 pressures, a sack, a forced fumble. That was a strip sack. And he had a win rate of 21.4%. He was relatively quiet the first couple of weeks, but here he is. Here he is in full display of, like, yes, this is what we entirely expected from the first defensive player taken in the 2024 NFL draft. He legitimately just went and got after it. You love to see it. And hopefully it's a sign of things to come. This is a Colts defense that needs some guys to step up. You lose to Forrest Buckner. He's now on IR, so they needed guys to step up. This was his highest snap total of the year, and he was just very, very successful in that regard. And to be fair, the first 2 games of the season, he only had 28 pass rushing snaps. In this game alone, it was 29 because, the Bears were throwing the ball a ton because their run game is pretty bad. Is pretty bad, but great game by Laiatu Latu. Really showed that technician, that ability to be a technician, and the plethora of pass rush moves and counters and secondary moves to be able to go and get after it. It was a really, really good game from him. Next, we got Elijah Chatman. SpaghettiOs, former interior player out of SMU. I'm not confident. I think he was a UDFA. Just want to be sure. Yes, he was a UDFA. Thought so. And someone who had some fine years at SMU, but nothing to tell you. It was this guy's probably going to be you thought he might be someone that bounced around rosters and maybe could stick on a roster, just be in depth. But in this game, he went and got after it. And I think, man, this dude's hustle. This is what it is. His hustle, his motor, it never freaking lets up. It never does. That's the thing. He might not necessarily get you with his pass rush tool set or his physical tools, though. I mean, he's got some pretty good straight line speed. Granted, I mean, at 280, yeah, you better have some speed too if you're going to be an undersized interior player. But he can truly go and get after it. And that's what happened in this game. And honestly, it worked. The way Deshaun Watson has been playing football this year, it worked to the benefit because Watson, very conservative with the football. Let's call it conservative. I'm just going to say, I don't think he can see anything. I don't think the vision is just not good. He's just holding on the ball for way too long. And that benefited someone like Elijah Chatman, who ended up having 4 pressures, a sack, and a win rate of 27.8%. So let me tell you, it's not just that. I don't want to say it was just like, oh yeah, no, he was kind of a late to the party pass rusher. Very lucky that Watson was just holding on to the football. He was winning quickly. Granted, Wyatt Teller comes out of the game fairly early. You're playing backup tackles. So yeah, there's some deficiencies along the Browns offensive line. Still, this is a stellar game from a UDFA. Awesome. I hope he gets more work. He's been getting he's had a healthy rotation role thus far through the season, where he had 24 snaps in the first game, 16 in the second, and now 21 in this third one, where, again, he kind of popped off. But he is being primarily used as a pass rusher. It's important to note, he's coming in on pass rushing downs. So I love that. They found a role for him, and in this game, he executed that role mighty nice. And that's the point of this rookie watch. I don't want to just point out and kind of monitor the play and the performances of just like first round or second round draft picks. I want to talk about some of the guys that are emerging that were maybe day 3 picks or that were UDFAs in this regard. So, dude, hats off to you. I'm not going to take my hat off. I'm a bald man. Light, it'll shine. It'll be blinding. I ain't trying to blind y'all. So let's go to the next, as it's going to be Tykee Smith, safety / slot player out of formerly out of Georgia, I guess, but for the Buccaneers. Played a really good game. I know the Bucs ended up losing, but he played really solid. He is really thriving in his current role. He did allow 4 receptions for only 28 yards, and that's important to keep in mind because he's playing around the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, some of those underneath throws, some of those bubble screens, quick passes, especially against Bo Nix. They're going to get the best of him, and his completion rate allowed, it's not going to look pretty. Again, he had a completion rate of 80%. But when you're playing in the slot, you're going to allow a high completion rate just because, well, there's a lot of gimmies. They're there for receivers. There's a lot of gimmies. Kind of like your prime focus is to, if you can, maybe create a big play or limit those underneath plays. And he did a wonderful job of that. He had 6 tackles, 2 defensive stops. You love to see it, man. You love to see it. And I think because it's not like he's just stepping in because Antoine Winfield is hurt. He got the start last week against Detroit. Which, granted, again, Winfield was hurt, but he played a significant role in the opener as well. Like, this is their slot guy, which is perfect. I totally thought he was that type of player coming in, and he has been a wonderful run defender thus far. Has done a very good job of being able to limit catches or yards after the catch, I should say. So, gotta show a little love to Tykee Smith. He was a 3rd round pick there for the Buccaneers. Now, let's go back to the first round. Let's talk about Quinyon Mitchell. I haven't really highlighted Mitchell in this series thus far. I may have talked about him in honorable mentions, but let's really talk about him because he had a really good game here. He ends up allowing 3 catches for 29 yards, had 4 tackles, a pass breakup, but I think where he was at his best, at his most dangerous, because keep in mind, a lot of the yards he allowed was on Chris Olave. Chris Olave, hell of a good route runner. Dude's fluid. Yeah, he's going to win some against you. But it was when the Saints tried to take him deep with Rashid Shaheed. That's what Quinyon Mitchell was doing. He was there to prepare for the deep shot. And he did a phenomenal job at limiting that. I mean, look at Rashid Shaheed. He ended up being targeted 5 times, no catches. 2 of those were with Quinyon Mitchell, and Mitchell on one of them, like it was a good battle. Like he made sure that each of those deep shots were contested, and they were. One was just thrown out of the reach of Shaheed, but the other was a very good play to deflect the pass. Like Quinyon Mitchell is legit. Big reason he was my corner one. Big reason I thought he was a top 10 prospect in this class. And he's having a very good year there in Philadelphia. So I love to see it, man. I love to see it. And then the last guy I'm going to primarily highlight on this list is Odunze. You got to talk about him, right? He had a big day receiving. We'll talk about in the honorable mentions some of the other guys, maybe the first two guys that went ahead of him in this receiving class. But Odunze finally got his. Thank goodness. To be fair, Caleb Williams threw the ball a hell of a lot. And I mean a hell of a lot. He ends up having 11 targets, goes for 6 receptions for 112 yards, and had his first touchdown, kind of making up for, well, the touchdown drop he had against the Texans on that quick slant. But he was 2 for 3 on contested catches. He had a forced missed tackle. He did a good job. 5 of his 6 catches resulted in first downs. He was showing you that, oh yeah, no, this was our first round guy. This was a top 10 guy. Odunze out there just eating, dude. Eating. He's going to be a really good threat once this offense kind of figures out. Kind of figures it out, because right now it's on the struggle bus. And once there's a little bit more stability, like the run game doesn't have to be good, but it can't be what it is right now if you're going to keep defenses honest. Like defenses already know, oh, run game trash. And I think now they're starting to make a move to Roschon Johnson, maybe as the primary ball carrier, which should enable like the offensive line. I don't think the offensive line necessarily has been as awful as people make it out to be. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not been good, but I don't think it's nearly as awful as like, oh, this is a bottom of the league unit. I don't necessarily agree with that. And I'm not saying they're like a top half of the league. I'm saying maybe they're in that like, maybe they're like the 20th, 24th worst offensive line in the league right now. But I mean, a lot of that is communication and whatnot. Like the individual performances aren't necessarily terrible from this offensive line, but once everything starts to stabilize there, hoping that it does, it should create more opportunities, or at least better looking opportunities for Odunze. Because to be honest, like not a lot of his opportunities in this game were on target throws because, well, Caleb, he's rushing for his life, or he's trying to get the ball out quick because pressure's there. So yeah, like better days lay ahead. This is just a little appetizer. I think Odunze, this could be the start of something very, very good. But again, a lot of that is dictated based on the rest of the Bears offense. But let's talk about some of the honorable mentions this week. A little offensive heavy, but that's a-okay. Carson Steele got his first start of the season. Isaiah Pacheco, he was injured. Keep in mind, UDFA at a UCLA. Carson Steele kind of made the squad just because of the grittiness, the throwback, just piss and dirt and vinegar. Is that a saying? But piss and vinegar type of play style. Like just he has that old school NFL mentality. You love that, right? You love that. But he was very good this week for the Chiefs. Ended up having, let's see, he had 17 carries for 72 yards and even had a reception. Only went for 2 yards, though. Kind of is what it is. But did a good job filling in and at least helping ease the current loss of Isaiah Pacheco. I think Pacheco's out for anywhere between like 4 to 6 weeks. I think that was the timeline with it, but good for him. Bucky Irvin, I think he's going to take over eventually, or at least he's going to have a bigger portion of the volume than Rachaad White in this offense. He's been far more effective on the ground. He had 9 carries for 70 yards, and he even had, I think, like 14 receiving yards in the passing game. So he's just been way more successful than White, and I think he's going to now probably be the main snap getter in that backfield, but again, we'll wait and see. Of course, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison, they had good games. I mean, yeah, they're good. Newsflash, they're good. Neighbors, 8 receptions for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison, 5 receptions, 64 yards, 1 touchdown. I don't want to name these guys every week. I think if I name them again, it has to be like an over 100-yard performance, which I'll probably have multiple this year. Let's talk about the offensive line. You had some guys have to step up because of injury, like DJ Glaze stepped in and honestly looked pretty solid. Was it perfect? Hell no. He's a rookie. It is what it is. But it was way better than I expected. It really, really, really was. He ends up allowing, I believe, 5 pressures. Let's see. Yep, he ends up allowing 5 pressures. Granted, that's on 49 pass blocking snaps. And did allow a sack, but wasn't penalized. Was relatively solid as a run blocker, which that's not saying much. This run game can't do nothing. I was just glad that Jackson Powers Johnson ended up getting on the field a little bit. He looked good, but he only played 21 snaps. Play this man. What the hell? Regardless, good on Glaze. Glaze, looking positive. I thought he may have been like a reach. I thought he was a reach for the Raiders, so it's good to see a positive output for him. We got Mason McCormick. Didn't play a lot of snaps. Certainly did not play a lot of snaps, but he looked solid stepping in for the Steelers. Ended up playing 12 snaps at left guard. And granted, was more so of like a 6th offensive lineman, swing tackle for the Steelers. But I'm really hoping that he kind of works his way into the starting lineup for the Steelers, which might be a tall ask. It really might. I mean, if we want to like take a look at currently, that would mean you would have to. Well, I mean, I think it's entirely possible. It's not like Spencer Anderson's playing that good. This team's kind of waiting for Isaac Samalu to come back. So, like, I would love to see Mason McCormick just kind of like take over until Samalu does come back. But there ain't no way Mason McCormick ends up starting over Jayden Daniels, who's playing really freaking good football right now. So, yeah, it kind of is what it is. I just I had to highlight him. I really did. He was a guy I was exceptionally high on. And then Bo Limmer, good bounce back game. Kind of had an uneven showing last week, which I get it. Kind of the first start there. It wasn't going to look great, but this one did. He allowed 1 pressure against the Niners, excuse me, and he was actually a very good run blocker. And I was really high on Bo Limmer. I had him as a top 100 pick. I was shocked that he went as late as he did. I think he ended up going in the 7th round. Maybe it was the 6th. It was the 6th round pick, 218. But this was a very good showing, much better than in that Arizona game. And I would argue this showing, it was a better showing against better competition. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come. And then let's talk defense, man. Chris Jenkins, first taste of playing time this season, coming back from, I think it was a neck injury, but like a minor neck injury. But he really brought the run defense for this squad. He really did. He was out there on 13 run defense snaps, and this was a team much better defending the run. Fortunately, it didn't help the pass that much. I will say, again, as a pass rusher, it leaves a bit to be desired, but you knew what you were getting when you drafted him, and you were hoping to work on that pass rushing thing in due time. But it's nice to see right out the gate, very good run stuffer. Devondre Sweat, very solid game. Unfortunately, Tennessee not playing well. You can point fingers all you like, but at the very least, I thought Sweat played a really good game. And so did Kalen Bullock, man. I think Kalen Bullock slowly but surely is going to take over for Jimmy Ward. I really think that's probably going to be the case. He played 53 snaps this week, mainly playing that deep middle third, which he is playing. He's going to play that because kind of worry about him coming up playing run defense, but he had a pass deflection in the game. So ended up looking pretty good for him. But let me know who were some of your favorite performances from the rookies this past week. Maybe some of your least favorite performances. And as always, until next time, be easy, my friends. Later.